What up, folks? This is Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the Xler to provide you my thoughts on the latest episode of The Gifted. The Gifted, Season 1, Episode 4. All right, X-Men show. Giving me some X-Men powers, giving me some really, really good action. Like this episode a lot. Impressed by it. Felt very much X-Men. It felt very much in the world of the X-Men. The power use felt authentic. The team dynamic felt organic. The entire episode culminated with a climactic action sequence, so everything was kind of building up to it, so everything made sense. There wasn't filler. Even the stuff with Warpath and Blink, like sort of like this playing out of this like weird like romantic dynamic based on this memory that Dreamer put inside of Blink's head about them having some sort of romantic past. Even that is playing out nicely. Like it's the sort of thing where it's like it felt kind of forced in the last episode. Oh well, we need some character drama, but if it's going to be a slow burn and then ultimately culminating with them actually, like, you know, maybe building a relationship and maybe there being a love triangle between them two and Dreamer, cool. As long as it works, and it seems to work. Is like this chick that's playing Blink. I think her name is Jamie Chung. She's excellent, and so is the guy playing not Warpath, Thunderbird. They're both fantastic actors, and I buy everything they're doing. So if this were to lead to some sort of like romantic thing, like the chemistry is definitely there, so I totally buy it. The redheaded chick that's playing Dreamer, though, I think the reason why she kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and she did kind of rub me the wrong way initially, was because, unfortunately for me, I watched Under the Dome. Which is this horrible adaptation of a Stephen King story. It was terrible. Just atrocious. And I kept watching, and it was one of those shows where it's like, I kept watching, and then eventually I actually stopped watching. And that's a very rare thing for me. It's a very rare thing for me to invest myself in a show and to stop watching it. Like, I actually stopped watching it, like, in the 4th season when I just couldn't take it anymore. It was so horrible. But she was in it, and it kind of soured me for her. But she was... in I think the original Twilight movie, she was in one of the Twilights before they recast her as Ron Howard's daughter by Ron. What's her name? The girl that was in the Jurassic World, and Spider-Man 3, who played Gwen Stacy. Dallas Howard. So she played the role that this chick who's playing Dreamer played in Twilight at the end. I think maybe the first film we saw her. She was like the one of the 3 vampires that whose boyfriend was killed, and so she was like a spurned lover, and she had like a vendetta against the Cullens, I think they were called. I don't know. I only saw these movies once, folks. Okay, no, I saw a few of them a few times, building up to the end, but the ending was so flat that it totally lost. I'm talking about I'm not talking about The Gifted right now. I'm talking about freaking Twilight. I apologize for that, unless you're a Twilight fan, in which case you probably loved it. But that's probably not anybody on my channel in general. Back to The Gifted. Okay, so this chick, wasn't too hot on her, but I think she'll grow on me. I think the love triangle between her, Thunderbird, and Blink will be interesting. So all that stuff was cool, and the stuff with introducing this guy Pulse, back in the past and now back in the present as sort of this power suppressing mutant that's working for Sentinel Service, I thought was really cool. I really liked the look of his power with like his glowing eyes. It was very mutant, and it was very sort of in line with like the feel and look of the X-Men world as we've come to know it cinematically. So I felt like that was great. But of course, my fucking favorite part was when he got knocked out, and then all of a sudden Polaris was like, I can use my fucking power. So I got super excited that moment. And I was like, okay, bring it, bitches, bring it. I want to see some fucking Mistress of Magnetism fucking action. And then initially when she was like, "Oh, this I can't really. There's no real metal in here in the bus," that kind of pissed me off for a second. And then when Vampire Bill, who's the father Strucker, I forget his first name, said, "Take the nails out of my leg," I was like, "Yes, bitches, yes, this is what you do. This is what you do when you're showing the mistress of magnetism, and you're representing the powers of Magneto. Then this is what you do. You do some crazy fucking shit where she pulls out some fucking metal out of a guy's body. Obviously, harkening back to that fucking glorious scene in fucking that glorious scene in fucking X-Men 2 when Magneto's fucking in that plastic prison, and he and they pull out he pulls out the iron from that guy's body, and then he creates those three like metal spheres, and then he just like fucking pulverizes the place with those three metal spheres. That's probably the most legendary scene in like the entire X-Men series. And so this brief scene in today's episode was a callback to it. It was also a reminder, like, hey, we're not fucking around here. Like, this is Magneto's fucking daughter. She's got his powers. She's fucking ready to do what it takes with those powers, even if it's a little bit, a little bit gory to some extent. There was some blood there. There was some blood when one of the characters was shot. I forget his name, but the guy that can turn invisible, or sort of camouflage himself like the Predator, not necessarily invisible, but maybe like reflect light, and therefore it looks like light is going through him. I don't know. Anyway, whatever it is, he was shot, and there was some blood there. I was like, all right, they're going there with the violence. They're taking it. They're taking it to a level it needs to be. I want this show to be serious. I want it to take itself seriously. I want the action to be real. You know, I don't want it to feel like TV fake, kind of like Supergirl does. Supergirl. I want it to feel legit, you know. And it does, and it did. And yeah, so all the stuff with Pulse I really enjoyed as well. Anytime we saw Warpath, Thunderbird, crashing through a wall or using his powers, that was really exciting. Even seeing this Eclipse guy like fucking go off with his like solar powers, I thought was really cool, and that was happening at the same time as Lorna was exhibiting her powers, and like oh god, man. They did not stop with the three nails, even though I love how like immediately after she took the nails out of the leg, like we see her shoot them through that fucking plastic wall into the security guard. That was fucking dope, man. I was like, all right, show, you're doing me right. You're doing me right, show. I appreciate that. I appreciate that 100%. Thank you, show. Thank you for doing what you should be doing. And then she fucking stops the bullets. It's like, yes, they better fucking show that shit. Like, I like that was the first thing I said. Like, as soon as they started shooting, I was like, they better fucking have her stop the bullets in my head right before it happened. And I was like, yes, motherfuckers, yes, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. And then she like fucking takes all their guns. Perfect. Thank you. Because when they originally caught her, it felt as though like she was gonna be like kind of a weak version of like Polaris. And it's like, no, we cannot have a weak version of a mistress of magnetism, the daughter of Magneto, who has the same fucking powers as Magneto. We cannot have a weak version of that. We need a fucking legit, powered up, ready to fucking take motherfuckers down with those powers. And that's what she did, and it was great, and I really enjoyed that. Man, I enjoyed it. In fact, I'll probably watch this again. Just that sequence. I'll watch just that sequence again because I really fucking loved it. Yeah, and then the family getting away, the Strucker dad meeting up with the mom. Love that. Even the stuff with the kids, like their whole arc of like figuring out that in tandem they could really accomplish a lot of cool things was really cool. It's kind of like this show's version of like Secondary Mutation, like this sort of interaction of different people's powers and kind of creating a different result. We saw it with the Aurora Borealis effect when Eclipse and Polaris kissed. And I'm thinking maybe something's going on with Blink and Warpath, or not. Maybe when they're together trying to like use their powers, potentially. But the two kids, apparently, when they use their powers together, there's some sort of like, I don't know, either an amplification or some sort of different version of both of their powers combined. Um, so it feels kind of like a secondary mutation sort of thing. But the secondary mutation thing was something that happened when Grant Morrison started writing the X-Men in the 2000s. During his new X-Men run, he came up with this notion of mutants, after having their powers a certain amount of years, potentially being put in a situation that makes them develop a secondary mutation and therefore a second power. It started with Emma Frost, who was always a telekinetic and a psychic, and a telepath. Her developing the ability to turn into diamond form. That was her secondary mutation. And then some writers kind of carried on the tradition of using the secondary mutation, but others did not. And you barely hear about it these days in the comics. But it's an interesting situation. The notion that like different mutants' powers interacting could result in some other cool power is kind of interesting as well. And again, it's kind of like a secondary mutation sort of effect, which is interesting. And I'm willing to buy it as long as they are consistent with it, and it continues to be interesting, which it has. So this episode very much felt like what I want this show to be. It very much felt like the X-Men, even like the shots of their lair, like the mutant underground lair. They're kind of these like bird's eye view, kind of sweeping, panning shots over like the location, which looks kind of like a mansion, a bunch of trees in the middle of a forest. That's very sort of iconic of like the X-Men franchise. Whenever we showed the X-Mansion, there were always kind of like these bird's eye view kind of panning shots of like the mansion, maybe with like a bunch of trees surrounding it. So that is, part of sort of the visual language of the movie series that they're kind of, I think, adapting for the show to make it, again, kind of feel visually consistent with what we've seen so far, which is awesome. More of that, please. More of that. So like overall, I really like this episode. Like every all this stuff with the father and Lorna, I really loved. Yeah, man. I mean, I liked everybody's performances. Yeah, I'm really happy with the show. Really happy with this episode. Making me happy overall about what's happening with the show. Last week I expressed some concerns because I have concerns. Like I do not want to get invested in the show and then have the show be taken from me. Essentially, like I would not want that. I want this to be a show that succeeds, is of good quality consistently, and it becomes popular, and it deserves that. Like the X-Men universe deserves that. And so hopefully we will continue to get some good quality stuff moving forward. Again, I really enjoyed this episode. Looking forward to seeing where the story is going to go. Happy to see that the family's back together. Lorna's back in the mix, so like all that prison stuff is done, and we can now kind of see where like the collective goes together. I like that Sage is in it. Sage is an interesting character. I look forward to seeing her play a bigger role. Hopefully. Yeah, man, this was really good. There were a lot of different powers being exhibited at the same time in that final sequence, which is what the X-Men's all about. It's all about like all these different mutant superhuman people, mutants, with different powers, like in team dynamics. That's always been sort of like the most captivating part of sort of like the spectacle aspect of the story, the X-Men. And so you need that. And I saw it here, and I hope to continue to see it as we move forward. And I look forward to seeing more about this storyline with this Pulse character and his relationship to Thunderbird. And, if they can maybe get him back into the fold as well, find out what's been going on with him. And like, obviously they're reprogramming mutants. Maybe this is all going to Genosha, Maybe there's all this, because the collars and then like kind of the reprogramming of mutants to kind of work in like kind of as slaves is a very Genosha thing. So maybe we'll see a Cameron Hodge at some point, perhaps. Mayhaps no. We'll see. It's interesting. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming. I'm excited. All right, all you people that were kind of like, wondering if I'm going to be excited about this show. Hey, I don't want this show to be bad, okay? And I'm not simply just going to love it because it's an X-Men show. I want it to be good quality, and I'm not going to just sit back and allow there to be crap and me not to call it out. Okay, so I'm being hesitant here because bottom line, Fox has produced crap. All right, you just need to look at X-Men 3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine. Things have been good lately, but you know the tides can turn very quickly. And so we have to be cautious. But for now, I'm feeling good about this show. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I'm looking forward to more, and that is all that matters right now. Anyway, looking forward to next week. I will talk to you guys about that next week. For now, if you haven't already subscribed and you want to keep up with me, you can press that button down there. Pressing that button will keep you up with me. As always, I want to remind all of you that if you haven't already, put an X in the box. You should, because ain't nobody checking me, folks. Ain't nobody checking me. And yes, that is a Nicki Minaj reference, by the way. All right, bye-bye.